For 17 years, Dennis and Sheila were a fixture of their small community. They were high school sweethearts whose lives revolved around a massive, deeply religious network of relatives. In this environment, social standing wasn't just about who you were, but how well you stayed anchored to that family tradition. That stability was tested when Dennis's childhood friend John returned to town with a terminal diagnosis. While the couple initially offered support, the dynamic quickly shifted. Sheila began taking over every aspect of John's care, creating a distance in her marriage that had never existed before. Sheila frames her exclusivity as a religious necessity, telling Dennis that John is too ashamed of his illness to see him. By claiming this caretaking as her own spiritual burden, she manages to isolate Dennis from his friend while making any questioning of her time away look heartless. Inside John's apartment, the boundaries of friendship and caretaking were gone. While Dennis stayed home, Sheila and John crossed the line, beginning an affair that took place in the very room where she was supposed to be providing hospice care. In a community that values charity above all else, no one thinks to look for betrayal in a sick room. The collective belief in her religious devotion provided Sheila with a cover that was almost impossible for a husband to challenge without appearing cruel. Maintaining this deception required more than just lies. It required a lookout. Sheila manipulated her 16-year-old daughter, Sophia, convincing her that John needed comfort in his final days. This turned a naive teenager into a willing participant in her father's undoing. Sophia's role was purely tactical. She monitored his commute, serving as an early warning system so her mother was never caught. Sophia also kept her younger brothers upstairs. This allowed Sheila to arrive minutes before her husband, into a perfectly normal home. The arrangement reached its limit when John finally passed away. The expected return to normalcy never happened. Instead, Sheila revealed she was pregnant with John's child and expected Dennis to raise it. When Dennis refused, the family network was mobilized against him. In a forced intervention, both extended families demanded he sign the birth certificate. They argued that, for the sake of the church and the family's name, he needed to accept the child as his own. In these types of social circles, the group's reputation is often treated as more important than the individual's well-being. The demand wasn't for Dennis to heal, but for him to stay quiet so the community's image remained undisturbed. Dennis didn't give in. By refusing the family's demands, he effectively cut himself off from the only support system he had ever known, standing alone against his parents, siblings, and in-laws. He then shattered the family's attempt at a polite solution by revealing Sophia's involvement. By exposing the fact that his own daughter had acted as a lookout for the affair, he forced the family to see that this wasn't a single mistake, but a coordinated betrayal. The reaction from the family was immediate and physical. When Dennis used blunt language to describe his wife's actions and the child's parentage, Sheila's mother responded with a hard slap to his face, a clear signal that the family had chosen their side. Dennis walked away from the house and into a stark, quiet apartment. Without the noise of the family conflict, the weight of the betrayal hit him, leading into a deep, alcohol-fueled depression as he struggled to exist in the silence. He was eventually reached by Arthur, a divorce attorney who took an interest in his case. Arthur didn't just provide legal advice, he acted as a blunt mentor, forcing Dennis to stop drinking and start focusing on the legal steps needed to protect his future. Simply leaving a toxic situation doesn't mean the damage is gone. A person cannot start the work of rebuilding a stable routine until the initial shock of the collapse is over and the self-destructive impulses are brought under control. Arthur's strategy was focused on the boys. He told Dennis that if he wanted shared custody, he had to be beyond reproach, no drinking, no outbursts, and absolute focus on the court's requirements. During court-ordered therapy, the reality of the situation became clear to the professionals involved. Dr. Evans concluded that the marriage was dead, not because of a lack of effort from Dennis, but because of the calculated nature of Sheila's betrayal. After the divorce, John's final will provided a massive trust fund for his children and a letter for Dennis, a posthumous attempt at an apology for the damage he had caused. Dennis didn't finish the letter. He took the paper to his fireplace and burned it, refusing to give the man who betrayed him the satisfaction of being heard. Removing an abuser's influence means more than just a legal decree. It involves detaching emotionally and refusing to provide the closure or forgiveness the other person wants to ease their own guilt. 2 years later, Dennis had a home and a routine with his sons. On the surface, he had moved on, but he remained internally guarded, unable to trust anyone outside of his immediate household. When he met Valerie, a teacher at his son's school, his trauma response was to push her away. He interpreted her kindness as a potential threat, a reflex built from years of having his trust used against him. His therapist pointed out that by staying closed off, he was allowing his past to control his future. Healing didn't mean becoming invincible. It meant opening his hand and taking the risk of being vulnerable again. Moving forward requires a conscious effort to separate past trauma from current reality. It means acknowledging that while betrayal is possible, refusing to connect with anyone ensures that the damage done by the original betrayal remains permanent. Sophia eventually returned, now 18 and dealing with the fallout of her mother's reputation in the community. She reached out to Dennis, apologizing for the role she played and asking for a chance to be back in his life. Dennis set clear boundaries. He was honest with her. He would never forgive Sheila, and that part of his life was over. But he chose to work on a new relationship with his daughter, one based on who she was now rather than what she had done. Today, Dennis is surrounded by the new life he built. He stands in his backyard with Valerie and their newborn, his older children playing nearby. Growth after a betrayal like this isn't found in a grand gesture of revenge. It's found in the quiet, daily decision to be a father and a partner who is no longer defined by the people who tried to break him.